Let's go into depth with the pump motor faceplate. At the top, you'll notice that it says permit. This means that there's no interlocks stopping this pump from operating. So if you think it is safe, you may start or stop this pump. Right below is the tag with the common name. This pin will allow you to pin the faceplate where it is, and this pin will make it so that this faceplate does not leave the screen when you open up another faceplate. You can have 4 faceplates open per screen. Below that is the stop and start commands that you will use to start or stop your pump. The gray box is the command display. That's the box that says what the DCS is telling this device to do. So right now, the DCS is telling this motor to stop. Below that is a red box that says stopped. That means that the DCS has confirmed that the motor is stopped. So in this situation, you're telling the motor to stop and the system is stopped. This next row is how to control this automatically. You can select automatic, which may be a level control, controls this pump. So if it's an automatic, the pump will turn on according to the level in a tank. If it's a manual, you will have to go to this pump and start it and stop it when you want it to. And it will not be controlled by the control loop it is connected to. The state transition here is just an informative section. It might vary from instrument to instrument. This one in particular says there's a time limit to start this pump. So if you press start, it has 5 seconds to start, and it will count up to 5. If the pump doesn't start in 5 seconds, the DCS will stop telling the pump to start. This is a safety feature that protects the pump from wrecking itself if there's something in the line or in the pump that is jamming it up. There's an alarm display as well here. If there's an alarm associated with this pump, it will show up here. And you can acknowledge the alarm with this icon right here in the checkbox. At the bottom of just about every faceplate, there are these 6 common icons. The first one will bring up the display. It looks like a magnifying glass, and it will bring up the detail pop-up of the device. This is very useful if you need to do any troubleshooting or if you need to alter some simple parameters in the pump. The button that looks like a couple tanks will bring up the HMI where the device is located. So if you got to this faceplate through a search bar, you might not be on the HMI associated with this faceplate. If you want to get to the HMI associated with this faceplate, click this button. This looking button will display a real-time trend if you want to trend what's going on at this pump. If you have permissions, it will display the controls behind the device here. But if you don't have permissions, this icon will not be there. If you want to display the historical trend, you will open up this button. And if you want to acknowledge alarms associated with this device, this pump or motor, you'll press this button. And you can always open up Chart Builder, that button. Let's go a little bit deeper and go into the display of the detail pop-up of the device. Each pop-up is different for each type of device. Let's try to look at the motors and pumps. This is the pop-up that will show up when you click on the details icon on the faceplate. It will tell you a few limits that are set. You may or may not have permissions to change these depending on the settings at your plant. The passive is the time allowed for the motor to stop before it will alarm. So if the DCS is sending a signal for it to stop and it has not stopped, it will send out an alarm. Active is the time allowed for the motor to start before it will alarm. And then active 2 is another alarm. There's an interlock section, which is very useful, not only for troubleshooting, but for trying out things to get something to work. If a device has interlocks, they will show here. So for instance, for pumps and motors, it might be if a valve is open, or if another, some sort of condition that must be present for the pump to turn on. If the condition is there, there's an interlock there. This one doesn't have any conditions, but there can be more than one. There might be several. Somebody with the right permissions can bypass interlocks. I do want people to tread safely on bypassing interlocks. Production problems as well as safety concerns might happen if you bypass an interlock that is instrumental to safety. So, level too low in tank, right? If that's in there and the tank level gets too low, there will be an arrow that shows up right here as the first out. And maybe that triggers several other conditions, such as flow goes to 0, XYZ, lots of different conditions. They might be multiple bolded conditions that have interlocked this pump from working. What you can usually determine is the one with an arrow here under first out will be the one that caused the initial interlock and will be the main cause of your problems. If you know it's not a safety issue or a production issue and the plant manager wants to log in and bypass it, he'll click here. And the rest of these should either kind of fade away or maybe they're not interlocked out anyway, but then the pump will start. But if that level being there is very important, it might cause a safety issue, so be very careful. This area over here is used for troubleshooting. Right now it says it's running and in service. So this is a good thing. It might say I/O error. If there's a problem, it'll usually be in red text. And then if it's an error, somebody can troubleshoot that. If you want to run in simulate mode, you can. However, be careful. Remember to turn that off when you're done, because simulate does not mean it's running, even though you want to see if something's running.